Hello everybody and welcome back to Uncovering Inventory Systems. Hi, I'm Dark Slayer. I'm in the void right now. You know, the other day I was talking with ChatGPT, like a normal person, and I wasn't having an existential crisis, I promise. And something that I relearned about myself is I really suck at understanding my self-worth. So this is an attempt to combat that. I have a Patreon, and I really would love to have more support so that way I can continue to provide great content. I love all of you guys, regardless of whether you're capable of supporting me or not. Of course, just being here is enough. But I'm trying to battle childhood trauma. I'm worth it. Anyway, go watch the fucking episode. In the last episode, we had finished creating two separate widgets. We created the inventory container and we created an inventory slot. So in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to pass the information to a slot as it gets created and then populate the container. So let's go ahead and create a couple of things to get the inventory on screen. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to first person input. We're going to get actions and I'm going to create a new input action. So we're going to go up to input action. I'm going to do IA underscore inventory and we'll go ahead and hit Control Shift S to get that saved. Default settings should be fine, should be a digital bool. And then what we'll do is under default, we'll go ahead and add our inventory button. And I'm just going to set mine to B. I'm a bag person. I like B. And that should be good. We'll go ahead and hit save and close this. Then because we're putting our information in the first person character, I am going to go ahead and open that up. And now what we'll do is we will go ahead and type in enhanced input. And remember, you were not looking for the action value, but instead you were looking for the event, and we need to grab the enhanced input or enhanced action inventory. And before we continue with this, what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and head back to our content drawer. I'm going to head over to my widgets folder. And remember, we created a HUD, and it should consist of like your game name. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to, at the top left here under search palette, we are going to type in, I forget the name, inventory, let's see, W inventory container. We're going to type in W underscore inventory container, and look, you'll actually see that you can drag out the widget that you created. Now, by default, this is not going to be draggable and movable. For now, we just want it to appear on the screen, so this is good enough. I am going to change, however, the anchors, so it's not trying to decide where to put it via the top left, but instead the right middle. So I'm going to hit Control and Shift at the same time and click on the right middle dot. That'll center it to the right middle. And then we just need to, I believe, subtract from the X here. We'll subtract by like 200 so it's not directly on the edge. We'll compile and save. And I think the only thing else I want to do here is go into the graph for the HUD. And in order to do this, we're actually going to need to go to our interfaces, because now we're going to need one for specifically communicating with the HUD. So I'm going to go up to Blueprint. I'm going to go to Blueprint Interface, so BPI underscore, and this will be for the HUD. Control Shift S, and let's open that up. We might have to do this with multiple functions, but for now we're just going to do one. I'm going to click on New Function, press F2 to rename it, and I'm just going to type in inventory because I always start with the main category of what it is. So inventory underscore populate. And in order to populate our inventory, we currently have, let's go take a look. Widgets, inventory slot. We currently have an icon and a name. So what we need to do is pass the icon and the name. So for input, we need to add one, and we will do icon. You know what? Let's name it right. We'll name it thumbnail. This is something that is not inherently obvious, but it's actually called a brush slate. So we're going to need a brush slate, or a slate brush. Add one more, and we need the name. And what did we make the name? Let's go to the inventory slot. I forget if I used text. Yeah, it's just text. Okay, so we need to pass text. So we'll go up here, type in text, boop. So in order to run this, we need a thumbnail and a name, and we'll hit compile and save. One more function we're gonna need, which I got ahead of myself. We do need the inventory populate, but the main reason we need to come in here, sorry, I'm a little all over the place, is inventory toggle, because we need to have it either appear or disappear. And we'll just hit compile and save. We shouldn't need to send any information with that. Head back to our, not the inventory slot, but the actual HUD. And what we're going to do in here is go to the class settings. We need to implement the interface we just created. So we need to go to implemented interfaces, click add, and we want BPI HUD. Remember, I am getting ahead of myself a little. I need to keep remembering I like to explain the why. The HUD lets us communicate between blueprints. So in order for one blueprint to speak to another, we're going to use an interface. And whenever the HUD implements this interface, it is because we're saying we need you to do certain things that we define. And now that it's implemented, if you've compiled and saved, you'll notice on the left-hand side here, we have an interface caret, and we can click it. And here are the two things we created, interface toggle and interface populate. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that interface toggle. And you'll see now we have a custom event that gets called whenever something tries to communicate via the interface. So what we need to do, let's go back to the designer, is have this selected, your inventory container. And on the right-hand side here, what you need to do is, you see where it says visibility? We need to pop this down and just completely make it hidden and hit compile and save. So by default, it is hidden. And then in the graph, what we need to do is we need to create two custom events. We need show inventory, or actually, you know what? I'm breaking my own naming convention. Let's fix it. We need this to be inventory show, and then another custom event, which is going to be for hiding it, inventory underscore hide. Now there's multiple ways that we can go about checking if it's currently visible on screen. However, I'm going to make it as absolutely simple as possible. We're just going to create a Boolean that keeps track. So under variables, I'm going to click add. It's already a Boolean, and I'm just going to say inventory underscore shown. So what we'll do is whenever we toggle the inventory, we will check on inventory shown with a branch. I held B and clicked. That's how you quickly get that. And then I plugged in the inventory shown. And let's go ahead and set this. Is the inventory on screen, just like that. And if it is on screen, then if it's being called, it's because we need to do inventory hide. If it's not on screen, then we need to do inventory show, just like that. And this will be a very simple way to toggle the inventory on and off. The first thing I want to do, by the way, on both of these before we forget, is let's create a set inventory shown. And because this is for showing the inventory, that means that this is now true. And since this is for hiding it, it means that this is now false. So go ahead and get those set. Compile and save, do that as much as possible. Now let's get a reference to our inventory container. If yours isn't here on the left-hand side, that's because you didn't set it as a variable. On the designer, make sure this is clicked, and at the top right here, make sure you set it to is variable, and it should show up on your left-hand side within the graph. And what we're going to do is we're going to set visibility like this. And now you'll see we got all kinds of options. Well, for inventory show, we just wanted to say visible. So we'll plug that in just like that. And then we'll go ahead and copy and paste our reference here. And we will set the visibility to hidden like that. Plug that in just like this. And there we go. We'll hit compile and save. However, let's continue our good practices. Let's go ahead and make 4 comments. Let's grab this one. Toggle inventory. Comment. Show inventory. Comment. Hide inventory. And then grab all 3, inventory, just like that. And then what I'll do is I'll grab the overall comment, and we need this to be show bubble when zoomed, just like that. So it's very easy to quickly find whenever you are adding a bunch of code to your HUD. So let's go ahead and compile and save this. I'll even color code these sometimes, and if you don't know how to do that, just click on the overall comment. Comment color is currently set to white. Just for funsy, I'll set it to blue, and there you go. Compile and save. Also, I'm moving quick because I'm realizing how many episodes this series is going to be if I don't bust my ass. So I'm going to continue to try to explain things, but remember, we're moving quickly and just let me know if you get lost. Okay, it's going to be a weird cut. I apologize, but that's fine. Go ahead and open up your HUD that we created in Systems. If it does this, just at the top, click on Open Full Blueprint. And now we're inside the HUD. Now what we're going to do is we are going to create a custom event. You know what? No, we're not. We're going to go to the top. We're going to go to Class Settings, Implemented Interfaces, and we need to add the BPI HUD, and we'll hit Compile and Save. And in our HUD, we are going to add that inventory toggle custom event from the interface. And we're going to create a set of logic really quick that will create it if it needs to. Otherwise, it will just show it. And how we're going to do that is out of event toggle, inventory toggle, we're going to create widget. And the widget class is going to be the W inventory container, okay? And then out of the return value, you're going to promote that to a variable. On the left-hand side, click on the new var, hit F2 to change the name. And we're going to make this like W inventory. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as the widget name, but it can be if you'd like. And then what we're actually going to do is we're going to undo this execution pin. We're going to drag this down. And then using the variable we just created, we're going to do a get. And if you right-click on that get reference, you can actually convert to a validated get. So what is this doing? This is saying, hey, does this exist? That's what this is doing. It's like, hey, does this exist? If it doesn't, boom, I want you to create it. However, if it does exist, I'm actually going to pull out it right here, by the way. If it does exist, then what I want you to do is toggle inventory, inventory toggle rather, and then make sure it says message. And then go ahead and hit is valid and plug that in like that. So what it's going to do, does it exist? Oh, it doesn't exist yet? Well, let's get that made really quick. We'll go ahead and get it created and then toggle it for me. Compile and save. Okay, cool. So now that this has a toggle within the HUD that we've created, let's go ahead and call that whenever we press our button. So back in the first person character, on started, I'm going to pull out. In fact, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to right click and type in get HUD. Get player controller. It's get player controller, and then from the player controller is where the HUD's located. So then we can get the HUD like that. So this is just two quick functions that make your life a lot easier. And it's one of the important reasons of using systems like game instances and HUDs is because of how quickly you can get them. Regardless, from the HUD, all we need to do is toggle inventory, make sure it's the message, and we'll put that on started like this. And it's really as simple as that. Let's go ahead and grab it and type in toggle inventory. We'll hit compile and save. So now whenever I press B specifically, it'll send a message to the HUD. The HUD will receive that message, see if the inventory is valid. If it's not, it will then create it and set it as a variable. If it is already valid, it will just go ahead and say, hey, you're being toggled. Then the actual see, this is why you should follow your own logic. I'm going to edit it in the video. This should be the HUD. And then now that this is all set up, it will then call the HUD. The HUD then says, oh, I'm being toggled. Well, is the inventory being shown? If it is, I'll hide it. If it isn't, I'll show it. Does it all make sense? Are we lining up to what's happening here? So we should be able to test this. It's just not going to populate yet, which is fine. Let's go ahead and hit play. And I believe we should be able to test this. This should at least pop up if I'm not mistaken. You know what's weird? I don't have any control at all. One sec. I have no idea why it shouldn't have done this, but just in case yours did too, for some reason, something happened where I needed to reset up that mapping context. So this is how you do it. You get the player controller, you get the enhanced local input subsystem, and then you add mapping context specifically to the default. it wasn't doing it, and I lost all control, but we're back, so... And you'll note that B isn't working, by the way. So let's get that figured out. So this is how you debug something. First off, what we're going to do is on toggle inventory, we are going to actually do a print string, and all it's going to say is trying to toggle inventory. So if this appears, we know that the logic has at least made it to here. So we'll hit play, and then what we're going to do is we're going to hit B. And you'll see that it's attempting to toggle the inventory. Oh, I know what the problem is. I don't even have to do the rest of the debug. Should I do it anyway so you guys know how to debug? Maybe I'll make a video about that. No, what we need to do is move this over for now. Add to viewport. There you go. Move that up. Plug this in. And then this is, of course, the target. It can either be from WHUD or it can be from the set. It doesn't matter. It's not on the viewport. That's the issue. Let's go ahead and remove the print string. We'll hit compile and save. And then if I hit play, we should be able to hit B. And there you go. And now it's toggling it on and off. However, let's populate it. So in order to populate it, we need to go to the HUD. And why do we go to the HUD? We have to run the logic in our head. The player presses B. That sends a message to the HUD to either show or hide the inventory. If it goes to show the inventory, we need to populate with whatever the current inventory is. So what we're going to do is on inventory show, we need to request from the game instance all of the information we're going to need to populate the inventory. Eventually, we're going to make this inventory comment cover it all. But for now, don't worry about it. Let's create a custom event. And it's going to be called inventory underscore create slot. And create slot is going to require thumbnail, which, remember, is a slate brush. Name, which is some text. And we'll hit compile and save. Now, this might not be the perfect way to do this. I'm being open and honest with you. I'm running this logic in my head to make sure it makes sense. And it does logistically make sense. There might just be an extra step here because I haven't been able to refine this idea yet. However, let's think about this. As I said, the player presses B. It goes to the HUD. The HUD, specifically, by the way, the game HUD, the HUD sees if the inventory is created and then either creates it, or if it is, it just lets the widget HUD know that they're toggling it, correct? So if the inventory does show up, then we need to create and add slots. So we'll go ahead and we'll also add. So create slot and inventory add slot. We need to access the game instance's inventory. So what I'm going to do is just have the game instance pass it to the HUD temporarily. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a function. So the function is just going to be called request inventory. And we're going to need to go to our interfaces because we need to communicate with the game instance, and we don't have one for that yet. So we're going to right click, we're going to go to blueprint, we're going to go to blueprint interface and BPI game instance. Control Shift S, and let's open that up. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to rename this new function to inventory underscore request. And what the input is going to be is if we go to our game instance, it's BP parent item, and it's specifically a map. Yeah, it's a map of items and quantities. So what we'll need to do is in here is make that input. So we'll just say player inventory. We'll make that input parent items, or parent item rather, BP parent item. We'll just make it an object reference, and then we need to make this a map. And then the secondary value is, I believe, an integer. and then we can hit compile and save. So whenever we call or request the inventory, it will temporarily pass it. That's why we're actually doing it in a function, and you'll see why in just a moment. So let's close BPI game instance for now, and go over to specifically the actual game instance. However, you'll notice when you double click on your interface now, it brings you to a function, which is perfect, because it means it has a return. So now you can return the inventory. Wait, was that not going to let me plug that in? Oh, these are class references. They're not object references. Change the parent item from a class, or from an object to a class. Then you should be able to plug this straight in just like that. And we hit compile and save. So now this is what's happening. Because we're going quick, let's run through the logic one more time. We press B, and we send the HUD a message that says, hey, we're trying to toggle the inventory. It says, oh, let me double check I've even got it created. And if I do, I'll let it know. If not, I'll make it. So then it sends the actual widget, that's the HUD, a request that hides and shows the inventory, right? And then we have some logic that shows it and hides it. And then, because we need to update the inventory, what we did is we started creating a function that is going to request the inventory from the game instance. So I'm going to right click and we're going to get the game instance and we're going to send it a message. So I'm going to send it a message, this request or inventory request, make sure it's the message. And as you'll see, we now have temporary access to the inventory. And the reason it's temporary is because if you pull out, you can promote to a local variable. So the reason that it's temporary is because anytime a function runs, if you set it to a local variable, the second the function has finished, it removes it from memory. So it's just a temporary access. So I'm going to go ahead and rename it to temp underscore, or not even temp, let's just stick with the naming convention, local underscore player inventory, pile and save. And now we can start running some of the logic that we have been creating. If you remember in the event graph, we have create slot and add slot. Well, let's go ahead and start creating slots, and we'll do it in the function. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out of this. We're going to type in keys just like that. And the reason we did keys is because now what it's going to do is it's specifically only going to get the classes first, which is fine because you can't do a for each loop with a map. So now we have access to the keys. The keys in this case are the class references. So then we can do a for each loop because now we just have an array of classes. And for each of the items in this array, we are going to get class defaults. Now, at first this might scare you because it's like, oh no, the class default is empty, correct? Because the BP parent is indeed empty. But these are going to be children of the parent. So you'll just have to trust me. The children will still have their actual thumbnail and name associated with them. So with the item name and thumbnail, we can go ahead and pass the information and create slots. So if I pull this out, I can do create slot. Oh, that's not what we want. We want create slot, but make sure it's inventory create slot, the one we made. And check it out. We can plug the thumbnail straight into the thumbnail, and I believe I made a mistake. This is my mistake. We need to just compile and save. Go ahead and open up your parent item. Mine's already open. Change this from name to text. That's completely my fault. Compile and save. And then whenever you go back to your widget HUD, you'll be able to actually plug this in. No problem. Compile and save. So what it's going to do is it's going to say, I need the inventory. I need the keys, which are the classes in there. And then it'll make an array. So we can do a for each loop. We get the defaults and we create a slot. Now, obviously, as of right now, create slot's not doing anything. So if we go back to our event graph, you'll see it's not doing anything. So let's make it do something. Let's pull out and create a widget, because every time we go to do this, we need to create a widget. And the class is going to be an inventory slot. And out of that inventory slot, what we need to do is, we can probably just do this in HUD actually. We need to go to interfaces really quick. So go to interfaces, the HUD interface. I'm just going to create a new one. inventory slot. That should work because there's no other thing that should be a slot related, and it's going to have inputs, not outputs. It's exactly what you think. It's going to be the thumbnail and the name. Name's text. Thumbnail is a slate brush. Compile and save. And the reason we're doing this is so that way when we're in the widget HUD, what we can do is immediately send the information to it and have it respond accordingly. So we're going to go ahead and just do inventory slot, just like that. And we can pass the thumbnail and the name. Let's go ahead and add a couple of reroute pins here so that way it'll look a bit cleaner, just like that. And after this happens, so we'll hit compile and save. So after it creates it, it sends it the info. We will then have to get our inventory container. So do a get on that. And we are going to no, don't just immediately add child. Hit get, type get grid, and you'll get the uniform grid panel underscore inventory. Well, that's what mine's named anyway. And then we will add child to uniform grid specifically. And we will pull that over. We aren't going to do the row and column logic yet. I'm sorry. We're just not going to do that quite yet. Let's just test this first. And the return value will be right here. So let's run the logic in our head really quick so we know what's happening. We create the slot. We send it the information. I just realized I picked the wrong one. See how there's no envelope here? We need to delete this. We need out of this to do inventory slot, but it needs to be message. Why am I not seeing it? Control-Shift-S. Oh, compile and save. I bet it wasn't compiled since then. Inventory slot. Why am I not getting the message? Inventory slot. It's right here. I'm so confused. I'm going to type in inventory slot and remove the context. And there it is. If yours isn't popping up, just remove the context. There's no reason it shouldn't accept it. It's a very strange interaction we just saw there. But if yours is there, don't worry about it. So it'll send a message to the inventory slot containing the information, and then we're going to add it to the grid. So what we need to do now is define what happens when the slot receives the information. Should be very simple, correct? Inventory slot. So whenever we receive the information, all we need to do is get our image item thumbnail. Yeah, so get the image item thumbnail. And out of image item thumbnail, we're going to go ahead and hit set brush, because remember, this is a slate brush. And we are going to go ahead and click that there. And we are going to pass the thumbnail like that. And then we just need to grab our text block. So we'll go ahead and do a get. And we'll pull out and do set text like that. Plug her in. Send the name over. And there you go. Let's run the logic one more time. Press B. We send a message to the system HUD. It either creates the widget or just goes ahead and sends the message because it already exists. Then the widget HUD can toggle it on and off. And I'm glad we did this. We ran through this logic because every time it's shown, because we need to run our function request inventory like that. Request inventory asks the game instance, hey, would you let me have the inventory for a moment? It sends it. We set it as a temporary variable to be cleared. We grab the keys and then we say, hey, we need your names and thumbnails, and we create some slots. When we create a slot, we immediately send it the thumbnail and name that it's going to need, and then we add it to the grid, and specifically the first slot, which I know we'll have to do the math on that, but let's just test what we got so far. Compile and save. So, it's a lot. I know it's a lot. There's a lot of passing of information. This is why inventories tend to be hard and why a lot of tutorials do not do a very good job. I'm hoping to set a better standard, and I'm hoping you're following. Let me check the game instance. Do we have an item in there? We don't. Let's put an item in there so we can actually, you know, pass something. We'll pass dagger. We'll just put a 1 there. It just means it's our quantity. We'll deal with that later. Hit compile and save. Okay. Here it goes. So when I hit play, all that logic should be passed. And we have a simple dagger in the inventory. I'm going to end this one here, and I know a lot of you hate me. I know you hate me right now, and I'm sorry, but there's only so much I can do with the time I have. But I appreciate you all. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.